CNN's Jake Tapper did one laughably terrible video on Medicare-For-All. Now, before I show you the video, I have to just preface it with what he's actually talking about. So 2 weeks ago, there was a libertarian study showing that Medicare-For-All in the US would save $2 trillion over a 10-year period. Now, of course, the forward on that study did not show that because it was a libertarian study. So they focused on the fact that it would cost $32.6 trillion over 10 years without showing how it would actually cost more on the current system. Now, Jake Tapper did his research, looked into this to see if Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez were correct to point out that a Medicare-For-All system would save $2 trillion over 10 years. And you are going to laugh when you find out how he got his answer. Watch.
Is that true? Did a study funded by the Koch brothers indicate that Medicare-For-All would actually save the U.S. government trillions of dollars? No, it's not true, at least not according to the author of the study. The study in question is a working paper from the Mercatus Center at George Mason University that looked at the 10-year impact of Senator Sanders' proposed Medicare-For-All plan. Now, while it's true that the Koch brothers have given millions of dollars to the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, and an AP investigation earlier this year suggested that the Koch brothers do have control and influence over the hiring and firing of professors, we should note, for whatever it's worth, the authors of this study said the Koch brothers did not influence them in any way. We asked Senator Sanders' spokesperson. He told us that while the study says Medicare-For-All would increase the federal budget by roughly $32 trillion, it also says that the projected cost of all healthcare expenditures in the U.S. would drop by $2 trillion. The study's author says that that $2 trillion drop is not actually his conclusion. He said that's based on assumptions made by Senator Sanders. In fact, he wrote, quote, "It is likely that the actual cost of Medicare-For-All would be substantially greater than these estimates, which assume significant administrative and drug cost savings under the plan, and also assume that healthcare providers operating under Medicare-For-All will be reimbursed at rates more than 40% lower than those currently paid by private health insurance." In fact, he lays out an alternate scenario that does not include savings from provider payment cuts, and in that scenario, the report says that there would be a net increase in healthcare spending. Now, we're not here to make a judgment on the viability of Medicare-For-All, and we have no idea if the Koch brothers influenced the writing of this Mercatus Center study. But it does seem pretty clear that the presentation being made by Senator Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about this study lacks a lot of context, and the author of the study says they are not being accurate.
Okay. Jake Tapper figured out, really dove into this story and crunched the numbers and figured out that Medicare-For-All does not save $2 trillion over 10 years, according to this libertarian study, because he asked the author of the study. The same author that purposely misled people with the forward saying that it would cost $32.6 trillion without mentioning that it would actually save $2 trillion over 10 years. That author. This is terrible even for CNN. The reason other websites, other people were able to figure out that this study showed it saved $2 trillion over 10 years is because they actually looked into the study. They read their numbers. They crunched their numbers. And their numbers in the study show that it saves $2 trillion over 10 years. You don't go to the author of the study who's being paid by the Koch brothers to tell you what the results say. Because you look at the results yourself. Look at the numbers yourself. They couldn't even do that. They had to... This really shows the entire issue with mainstream press. Believing the line that they are told. The official line. Whether it's politicians, whether it's think tanks, it's always simply listening to what you're being told instead of actually diving into the facts. That is the problem with places like CNN and MSNBC and Washington Post and New York Times. And obviously, everything they do isn't terrible. I'm sure that they have, of course, actually in the past looked into stories and found the facts. But in this case, they did not do that. In this case, all CNN did was ask the libertarian author of the study what his study shows. And of course, he's going to tell you what he is paid to tell you. That no, what do you do? It doesn't save $2 trillion. No. Did you read the forward at the very beginning? I tell you, it costs $32.6 trillion, and that's the only number you should focus on. Don't look into my data. No. Don't look into that. It's laughable. This is embarrassing. And now how are any of us supposed to trust anything else that, factcheck.org puts out? How can we possibly trust them when we have now seen how easy it is to manipulate their so-called facts because all they do is simply ask the people that are lying to them? It's ridiculous and embarrassing. Jake Tapper should come out and discuss how he was wrong here and maybe that they actually should have looked into the numbers. So let me just, another aspect of this is Tapper also tries to create confusion around, well, maybe it'll cost even more than the study says. When in reality, when you look into it, it would likely cost even less than what that libertarian study says. So let me read this from Jacobin. Messaging strategy aside, there is room to quibble with Blahouse's findings. He assumes administrative costs will only drop from 13% to 6% for those currently privately insured. But according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, Medicare's administrative costs have consistently been below 2%. He assumes utilization of health service will increase by 11%, but aggregate health service utilization is ultimately dependent on the capacity to provide services, meaning utilization could hit a hard limit below the level he projects. So, not only does this libertarian study show that a Medicare-For-All system would save $2 trillion over 10 years when you actually look at the numbers, Jake Tapper, but it also may be not generous enough and may in fact save more money. So this is, it's, at this point, I mean, you have to think this was done on purpose, that they are purposely misleading people, that there are forces behind them, whether it's, the Koch brothers sending Jake Tapper angry emails or whoever's behind factcheck.org, pushing this message out there. Because, I mean, what is the reason to address this now? This was all settled 2 weeks ago, but now they have to come out and be like, oh, no, $2 trillion. I know my numbers showed that, but you know what? If you ask me again, if you ask the author of the study, well, I'll tell you that's not what it actually says because I'm being paid by the Koch brothers. More money, more money, more money. Like, this is so freaking stupid. It's hard. It's really hard for me to take CNN seriously. And that's why I'm so surprised when they actually do good work. So I have a video on Chris Cuomo discussing how Antifa is not the moral equivalent, or there is no moral equivalency between Antifa and Nazis, because Antifa are actually fighting Nazis. They're on the side of good, on the side of diversity, on the side of being for everyone, whereas Nazis are for white supremacy. It should be an obvious argument, but again, the mainstream media doesn't point it out. But again, like, this is basic shit, guys. This isn't hard work. I'm one guy and I figured this out. All you have to do is actually look at the numbers and then go to people who also themselves crunch the numbers. And this is all over the place. So to listen to the author of the study when his own numbers show that Medicare for All saves $2 trillion over 10 years is just honestly ignorant.